Hello, kindergarten families. I just wanted to get a video out to you explaining our report cards since they'll be coming home on Friday. This year, we don't have conferences built around our report cards. So for many of you, this will be the first time you've seen a kindergarten report card. And then for others, we've made some changes. So there might be a few items explained a little bit different, or they may look a little bit different to you. So right up front, I just want to apologize. I used to do lots of takes with my videos to try to get everything just right. And then I quickly learned that it takes a long time if I keep doing that. So I'm just going to kind of keep pushing on forward and through the video. If I make a mistake or a blunder, feel free to laugh at me. But for the sake of efficiency, I just kind of keep on moving through this. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into assessing your child for these report cards. So I really want to highlight kind of that importance of this report card. Your child is much more than a score or a number on this report, but this does give us a really good comprehensive assessment of where your child is at this time and the progress that they've made till this point. And then more importantly, what are we going to do with that evidence and that testing moving forward? Which areas are they strong in? Which areas are they struggling in? And then how can we teach and address those skills? Ms. Herikoff and myself have already been busy working on many of these skills, and we'll continue to keep your child challenged the best we can and keep them making progress in their kindergarten year. And as I mentioned a few times to a number of people, February, March, and April are the best months of kindergarten. That's when we really cruise along, and you'll see as much progress in these 3 months as you've seen in the entire school year. So then the last thing is to celebrate with your child. These kids have been working hard. They've been doing a great job. I truly, truly enjoy having them in the classroom and seeing what we call in kindergarten signs of learning. That's one of our sayings in here. Every day we see different signs of learning with different students, and that's just the fun part of the job that I get to be a part of every day. So I appreciate your confidence in me to make that happen. And if there's questions after I go through this report, feel free to call, stop in, email to discuss anything you'd like to discuss around the report card or any other concern areas that you may have. I'm just going to kind of walk through the report card and explain it, and then I'll talk about where children or where students should be for this time of year in some areas as well. Everything is scored as a 1 through a 4. So a 1 would be a beginning skill, a 2 would be developing, 3 would be secure, and then a 4 would be something we'd consider exceeding grade level expectations. Some of the scores we'd expect a 3 because we've worked for mastery in those areas, while other areas we'd only expect a 1 for this time of year. If something is labeled with an NE, that would mean that there was not enough evidence at this time for them to reach that baseline score of a 1. So it's an area that would just be a beginning skill for them as well, too. And then lastly, we want things to be a 3 by the end of the year. So the end goal, as we look at a report card as a tool, is to have all of these skills be at least a 3 by the end of the year. Okay. The first item on the report card is the 26 letters and 26 sounds. The highest that a student can get in that is 3 because we can't invent more letters or sounds for them to attain a 4. So by this time of year, we'd hope that they would have a 3 in that area. If they're missing just a few letters or sounds, that's entirely appropriate. If they're up in that range of 8 to 10 letters or more that they're still missing, that's certainly an area we'd want to identify and work really hard at with that. You'll also notice in their conference folder that this report card came in. There's evidence pieces stacked up in that folder, and Ms. Herikoff was nice and diligent and put those evidence items right in order with the order of the report card so that you can follow along and kind of see exactly what your child can do to attain that score and then what items they need to work on to move those scores up as we continue through the year. Accurately reading high frequency words. That's that list of 100 words that you see in there, and we highlighted the ones that they could do. 10 is kind of about where they should be this time of year. We want them to know at least 45 out of 100 by the end of kindergarten. Blending sounds into words. This is what we would know, where your child would know as a CVC word, a vowel that has 3 letters, that has a consonant, vowel, consonant, like hat, dog, bit, anything like that. And first we look at for a 1 if they could do a beginning or an ending sound. A 2 would be that they could do both beginning and ending sounds. And then a 3 is that they're secure in doing beginning, middle, and ending sounds. Vowels are the area that we're really focusing on in the classroom right now. Those are the hardest for students to hear. But they usually make a pretty quick turn around this time of year to where they start to handle those. And obviously the ah and are the hardest for them to differentiate along with and I, that they have the hardest time hearing the difference between those sounds. Reading grade level text, this is that there's a little reading log, phonics type book thing, and you'll see a bunch of check marks above the words. And then if they were unable to read a word, I wrote above what they said. And there too, you can kind of see what sounds they're able to hear and say and how they're able to blend those sounds when they're reading those texts. And then I also see that I skipped blend sounds into words. This is a series of nonsense words we give them. So there's still a CVC word, but it might be like Yaz, Y-A-Z as a nonsense word. And then we see how many of those they can do in a minute. So those things are really just surrounded around, can they start to blend those sounds into words with their reading and their writing. Writing craft, you can see their sample story in there along with the rubric that we use to score that in the areas that we're looking at. Most students should be at a 2 right now, which means they're able to write a 3-page story. And then they're starting to add some details into that story. And that's now we add a little bit more depth, talk about how we just show the story versus just telling a story, and then adding in emotions, characters, and then just a few more details into what happened to move students into that 3 area. Accurately spells consonant, vowel, consonant words. I already talked about that one. That's the spelling inventory that you'll see. Fan, pet, dig, and then I highlighted the letters that they were able to include in those words. Printing legibly, that's their name and their ability to set their letters on the lines accurately, and how they're forming their letters that we see in their daily writing. Their last name, we start working on that now after Christmas and have been a little bit. So we'll start having them write their last name on paper so they learn how to spell and write their last name as well. Asking and answering questions, that is something that is just observed on a daily basis with our whole group instruction. Are they raising their hand? Are they sharing their ideas? When we do turn and talk times with partners, are they sharing and talking with their partners about stories or answering questions in math or whatever it may be. And then moving up to math. Math, the best thing to do is just to take that stapled packet, and that actually has every single skill on there and exactly what they can do in those areas. Counting forward to 31, a lot of students have moved past that and are moving into or up to 100 by now. Counting backward from 20, reading numbers to 31. And that is, that's one area where students might have a 1 in, because if they switch one number, we say, all right, developmentally, they're still doing some reversals. For example, 15, 51, 13, 31. So then we just keep an eye on it and we work on those areas, and we'll just get a stack of like 12s and 21s and have them sort those. That's just that little piece that reminds us once in a while that they're a developmental learner. And they're still in those developing stages, and we just keep reinforcing those skills until they work out of that stage. Writing numbers to 31, that's those number grids that you'll see with their writing across the page in the boxes. And then representing numbers to 31, can they count in collections of items up to that number? On that report, that stapled report, you'll also see Mrs. Herikoff and I did some little handwriting and adjusting to some of those areas. Those are just kind of that expectation. On the report card, it reads counting forward to 31. We want them to count forward to 100 plus by the end of the year. So we did adjust some of those levels just a little bit on that assessment sheet. These grayed out areas here, those were not assessed yet at this time. They'll be assessed at the end of the year. Adding numbers up to sums of 10. That's something we've been working really hard on and just started working on the subtraction side of things too. They are able to use counters and manipulatives to do that, but in the classroom, we've actually started using a little bit more efficient methods with number lines, we'll eventually get to counting on, where if it's 5 plus 3, they would just say 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll work on a little bit some strategies that are more efficient for them as we go through that. Subtraction, we didn't assess it, but we've just started working on that in the classroom as well. Excuse me. And then identifying, creating, and extending patterns. That's something we'd expect to be a 3 at this time of year. Sorting objects, same for that item as well, because those were skills we worked on early in the year and have just revisited as the year goes on. Recognizing 2 and 3-digit shapes. A 1 is not surprising in this area because we've only worked on the basic shapes. We'll start working on and have been including hexagon, rhombus, and then to get a 3, they have to do their 3-dimensional shapes as well, which we have not even introduced those yet. So a 1 and a 2 is very appropriate there for that time of year. Science, PE, and music. Those teachers included their scores there. So if you have any questions about those areas, you can contact those teachers as well. And then finally, over on the code of conduct side, areas that are 2s or 3s are very appropriate. We learn behavior and how to act within a group, our classroom, just like we learn letters and numbers with language arts and mathematics. Areas that are a 1 are areas that we certainly want to give attention to and work hard on those areas for students. But you'll also maybe see some discrepancies between my scores on the code of conduct and maybe what they scored in science, PE, and music. And our classroom setting is very regular for them. It's very structured. It's the same. They're here every day, whereas those areas, they're there every other day or less. So, in PE time with running and excitement and noise, it's harder for them to self-monitor, self-control their bodies. So you might see some discrepancies there with different scores that are given. So once again, thanks for taking the time to view this video. If you have any questions at all, certainly feel free to call or email me. I'll be making my way around too with phone calls, touching base with families, with our parent contact time as well here. So celebrate with those students once again, give them a big hug, tell them a great job, and thanks again.